Have you ever had a hard time trying to figure out what your skin's undertone is and what foundation to choose when you're looking at so many different options? I'm here to help you out. I get asked all the time what my tips are on how to color match your skin. So let's get right into it. Now, these tips are going to be in order of how I want you to start determining what your skin's undertone is. And the first step to this entire process is going to be the vein test. Now, it's a little bit more difficult on me. I have a lot of tattoos, but underneath my tattoos, I can see clearly that I have green veins throughout the inner part of my arm. Now, if you're someone at home who doesn't have a lot of tattoos on their wrist, it's going to be pretty easy to determine what color your veins are. Now, don't give up if you don't have them very visible on your wrist. You're gonna look into your arm. It's gonna be all on the inside of your arm where you're going to find your veins. The inside of your arm is where we don't get a lot of external sun. So we're not gonna get a lot of redness or different color variations on the inside of our arm as we do on the outside. The outside of our arms is where the sun hits us. The inside of the arm is pretty much perfectly protected because it's on the inside. Now, if you're still not sure what color they are, make sure you step outside, get some natural light. That's gonna be the best area to find and determine what color your veins are. Now, for me personally, I have visibly green veins, which means I am, traditionally speaking, a more warm and golden undertone. But in a second, we'll get into how I have an exception to this rule. Now, let's talk about the rest of the undertones that you could possibly be. So if you have green veins, you're gonna be more of a warm golden undertone. If you find blue veins, like predominantly blue or purple veins throughout your skin, you're gonna be more of a cool undertone. Now, let's say you have both, and actually a lot of people have both. You just have to make sure you look hard on both wrists. So if you have both, you're gonna be a neutral. You're gonna be someone who has actually a really easy time color matching their skin because you have a little mix of both warm and cool throughout your skin tone. Now, those are the three main undertones that you see the most in the beauty industry with different foundations. You'll see N standing for neutral, W standing for warm, and then C standing for cool. But there is actually a fourth undertone, and that is olive. Olive undertones are going to have a green cast to them, hence the name olive. So once you've determined what your skin's undertone is, let me explain what they are. So the warm undertone is going to be more of a warm golden hue. It's going to have hints of yellow in it, hints of orange even throughout. And just think golden. Now, a cool undertone is gonna have more pinks and reds throughout. And with neutral, you're gonna have hints of both throughout your undertones. So you're gonna have a little bit of warmth, you're gonna have hints of cool mixed in. It's gonna be like a nice melting pot, and it actually makes it a little bit easier because you have a little bit more flexibility on what shade you can wear. Of course, I want to preface this by saying there's always going to be exceptions to these rules, but generally speaking, and in my experience as a makeup artist, color matching people that I meet for the very first time each day as I do their makeup, this is a very accurate way to determine what your skin's undertone is. So I really want you to try to follow this guide first and foremost, because from here on out, it's going to be so much easier. Now, as a viewer at home, you probably assume that I'm just a warm golden undertone, but I do have a lot of hints of olive throughout my complexion. It is hard to tell, and the reason why I want to mention that is because I have a lot of external factors that can make it a little confusing when determining, when you're looking at me, what my skin's undertone is. So those external factors that I'm mentioning are, I have a lot of sun exposure, and therefore I have a lot of just built-in redness in my arms. And you see my arms, they're in the forefront of my body, but my face is completely different. Now, and I'm not talking like some redness in my cheek. That's an external factor as well. Just because you have redness in your cheek or you get a little red to the touch when you touch your skin, this is just skin sensitivity. This is not your undertone. Your undertone is what is underneath. And so this is external, but my true undertone of my skin is going to be a warm olive. I have lots of hints of green throughout my complexion. Step number 2, after you've determined your skin's undertone, from there, it gets so much easier, like I said. Then you want to figure out what category are you going to be in? Like, what shade range are you going to be in? And I'm talking about the depth of your skin. So are you going to be in the fair category? Are you going to be in the light category, medium, dark, deep? Now, in between all those shades, there's going to be many different shades to choose from. So once you determine which general category you're in, for me, I'm in the light to medium category, depending. Like, there's always going to be exceptions with every single foundation that's on the market, and shade depths as well as undertones tend to vary drastically from brand to brand. And that's going to be that wrench that's thrown in the system when you're following all these rules. There's still going to be some hiccups along the way. And now, in my opinion, I think that step number 2 is the easiest out of all the steps because it's pretty easy to figure out whether you are a medium, whether you're a deep skin tone, whether you're really fair. It's going to be pretty easy for you to figure that out. And once you do, when you go to that department store or that big makeup retailer like Sephora or like a Macy's, anywhere you're going that has a ton of different variety of brands to choose from, and you're looking at that broad range, a huge shelf of different foundation colors ranging from fair to deep. Once you have those two things locked down, from there, I want you to think process of elimination. So for example, what I mean by process of elimination. So once you have figured out, let's just say in theory, you are a light to medium. You've determined that you're in that category of light ranging to medium. So that's where I want you to hang out in the foundation aisle, in that area. And then from there, I want you to pick out 3 different shades that you think you might be. And then you're going to do the swatch test. And now the swatch test is where you're really going to determine what your foundation shade is going to be. So for example, I have a bunch of one of my favorite foundations down here. This is the Armani Luminous Silk. I love this foundation so much. I talk about it all the time. So I'm going to be swatching 4 different shades. They're all different undertones, and I'm going to be swatching them in a very specific spot. Now, before I show you where I want you to do the swatch test, I want to mention really briefly where I don't want you to swatch test. I don't want you to use the top of your hands to swatch colors, especially in store. This is not going to be a good, accurate representation of what your face complexion is. For example, external factors. Think sun exposure. Your hands get exposed to sun and different harsh elements way more than our face typically does. Also, our knuckles can tend to be a different color in general, so I want you to just eliminate the hand. I don't want you to do the hand. Next, I also don't want you to do the inside of your arm or the outside of your arm. I want you to specifically swatch your foundations starting from halfway down your cheek, down your jaw, and about midway to your neck. This is going to be the best and most accurate place to test your foundation color. Now, I don't want you to do the front of the neck because the front of the neck is going to be always much paler than the sides of the neck. The reason for that is because the front of our neck is constantly shielded by our chin. Our chins typically stick out a lot more than our jawlines. Let's get into the shades. I have 4 shades, like I mentioned. You could do 3, but like I said, 4 is even better because it's going to be a really eye-opening experience swatching different undertones against your skin to determine which one's going to work the best for you. I have various shades in different undertones, but they're all going to be in the same category. They're going to be falling under that light to medium category of complexion. Now I'm choosing different undertones because I want you as a viewer at home to really see the difference of what the wrong undertone will look like against your skin. And then once you find the right undertone, how obvious it's going to be and how it's going to just disappear into your skin tone. So starting with Armani Luminous Silk 5.25, this is going to be a medium pink, which is going to equal a cool undertone. So in the description of the shade, if you look online, it claims it's a medium pink. So pink meaning cool undertone. So let me swatch this one first. So I'm going to take that, bring it straight down to my neck. Make sure I get a nice even wash of it. So that is the 5.25 medium pink. The next shade from Armani Luminous Silk is the 5.75. This is a light medium golden. So that is the description of this foundation on the website. So you can see right away those gold tones popping through. You can see a lot of yellow and a lot of golden hue. And you're really going to notice it next to that cool tone leaning pink foundation that's next to it. Now we're moving on to the Armani Luminous Silk. This is a shade 6. Now the shade 6 is a medium olive undertone. So it's not saying it's golden, it's not saying it's neutral, it's straight olive. Now let me show you what this looks like on my complexion. Now you can visibly see those green, more olive hues throughout this foundation. That is a true olive undertone, which for me, I always have number 6 stocked in my makeup kit because it's one of the best olive undertones for a light to medium complexion that I've ever seen on the market. So they did a fantastic job of this shade. Now the 4th shade I'm going to swatch is 6.5 from Armani Luminous Silk, and this is a medium to tan neutral. So this is going to have neutral undertones. It's going to have both warm and cool tones throughout this foundation. So let me show you what this looks like next to the other 3. Now this one's darker in depth than the other ones. This is a little bit darker. This has tan in it. It's gonna be the deepest one out of the 4 that I'm showing you. Now here's where I want you to take a minute. I want you to take at least 2 minutes actually. I want you to let this dry down and let it adjust and kind of get to know your skin and your skin's chemistry, because it's going to look a lot different after 2 minutes is up. So let's give this 2 minutes to just dry down a little bit and kind of get used to my skin. Okay, now it's been a full 2 minutes, maybe longer. And the reason why this is an important step is foundation colors look totally different when you're first initially applying them onto your skin. They can actually tend to look a lot lighter than they actually will be in reality. Once they have dried down fully, that is the true color that they are going to end up being. So it's never good to apply a foundation while it's wet and then decide whether or not that's going to be your color. You want it to have that dry down time. That dry down time is so important. That is going to be the true representation of what that color is going to look like. Now let's go through these swatches together and let's talk about what blends into my skin and what stands out is obviously not my undertone. Now the first one is that cool, more pink undertone, that 5.25 from Armani. Now here's where it's tricky. It does look like it's going to blend into my cheek area because I have that external redness on my cheek. Now this is not my undertone. This is an external factor that's happening. So you don't want to go with what this shade is, right? Even though it looks like it could totally pass as a foundation I could wear because it's blending in with that pink hue, that coolness that is on my cheek. This is not my color, trust me. When you get down to my neck where I don't have that redness and where I have more of that olive and warm undertone popping through, like this is my true undertone, once you get to that area of my neck, you can see it looks way too pink and way too cool on my skin. So this one is out. This one is definitely out. Now on my cheek right here where I have that external redness, it's gonna look like it's too yellow in comparison to that area. But once you travel down to my neck, you're gonna see it blends much better into my skin. It truly almost disappears into my neckline, which is great. This is what you want to look for. You wanna look for the foundation shade that is disappearing into your skin. That is going to be your match. This olive undertone, you can see as it dried down, it's still looking a little too green. Even though I have olive in my undertone, I have a warm olive complexion. Some foundations are gonna look just too olive against my skin. And when you're taking into consideration the whole picture of my complexion, in comparison to everything going on, this ends up looking just way too green against my complexion. The next one over, you can see it's dried down, but it's just looking way too dark in certain areas. The undertone is okay because it's neutral and I can actually get away with some neutrals because I have those external factors, that redness going on from sun exposure, but it's still not a good match. This is not going to be my undertone. This is not going to be a good solid match for my complexion. Now when you look down, you can see it's visibly too dark once it gets down my jaw onto my neck. It's gonna look way too tan and too dark for my complexion. So this one is out as well. So that leaves us with the 5.75, which is a light, medium, golden. Now, the last thing I want to mention that is also very, very important is I want you to zoom out and I want you to get the entire picture. Now, I want you to take a step back from your mirror, and I know it seems like the right thing to do to be really close up on your skin so you can see all the different undertones and how it's looking against your skin tone. But the reality is you really want to take a good step back because when you're so tight up, you can lose perspective of what the entire picture looks like. From a distance, you'll be able to really tell which one is blending into your skin and disappearing the most. Okay, so we have finished the swatch test, the most important test of all, which is swatching the different shades and the different undertones to determine what's gonna melt into your skin and disappear the most into your skin. Now that we have determined together, I hope as a viewer, that the 5.75 light medium golden is my closest match, I'm going to take these swatches off and I want to share a couple more tips on how to accurately choose your foundation shade in different scenarios. So I'm going to take this off, and as you can see, I have that external redness going on because I just wiped it off with a makeup wipe, and that is a very irritating, friction-causing thing to do to your skin. So now as I apply this, let's talk a little bit more about just different tips, general tips that I can give on how to choose the right foundation. So these next couple tips are going to be more drugstore related. Okay, so if you are someone and you're wanting to pick up a foundation at the drugstore, here are some things you may or may not know. First of all, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Walmart, all accept returns. So that means whether it's opened or not, and more times than not, you're gonna be returning a foundation that you opened, you took home and you realize it's completely the wrong shade and you just guessed wrong because you can't swatch them in store because they don't have testers. A lot of people don't know that you can actually take these back. So whether you open it or not, if it's the wrong shade, you could take them back to these retailers. Now, I don't know about every single drugstore retailer, but I know that those main ones do accept returns because, you know, I've even like picked up the wrong foundation shade and had to return it or exchange it because I guessed wrong. Now, to avoid this issue, if you are purchasing at the drugstore, what I want you to do is once you figure out which brand you want to purchase your foundation from, once you determine what brand you want, I want you to go online to their website, their direct website, and I want you to look at the shade descriptions. Now, a lot of different drugstore brands unfortunately don't have undertones labeled on their foundations. They're more like porcelain, sandy beige, toffee, biscuit, you know, like things like that where you can just you don't really know what the undertone's going to be based on those shade descriptions. So once you figure out what brand you want to shop from, go to their website, look at the shade descriptions. That's going to be so helpful, so powerful in figuring out what your foundation shade is going to be at the drugstore. Now, I will say, shout out to L'Oreal, because L'Oreal True Match, they have the best shade range, period, in drugstore foundations. They are the top tier. Like, you cannot go wrong with the L'Oreal foundation. And you can see clearly this says W4. It's a warm, light medium, golden, more hints of yellow throughout. That is really helpful. Okay, now as I'm applying this 5.75, I want to talk about how I can also technically wear a 6.5 in the Armani Luminous Silk. Let me tell you why. If I wanted to be a little bit more tan, I could match the 6.5 to the rest of my body, where I have a lot more tan hues going on. I have more redness from that external factor of having sun exposure. So if I wanted to wear a 6.5, I do have that flexibility, but what I would have to do, and a tip for you as a viewer, if you're wanting to go for more of like your tan hues you might have if you're someone like me who has those different variations in tone going on, you could do that, but you would have to bring it all the way down your neck so you don't see that color discrepancy on your neck and your jawline. Now, another great way to solve this issue, if you're someone like me who has those different variations in tone, what you would really want to do is make sure you're picking up a bronzer. Now, for me, when I'm choosing a bronzer, I don't want one that's too on the olive side, because I want that tan, that true tan tone, to tie in with the rest of my body. And that's where bronzer, for me, is just a must. I always do bronzer. I really rarely ever skip it. I love looking for bronzers specifically that are more of a neutral undertone. Those just work the best because I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. Like, I have my true skin match with that golden undertone foundation, but then I'm bringing in that warmth that you would get from the sun. And it's really tying in my entire complexion and bringing a cohesiveness to my complexion. So I'm just gonna use one of my favorites. It's the Baked Bronzer from Laura Mercier in the shade 3 and with a BK Beauty 103. And another thing I wanna point out, and this is definitely worth mentioning because it can cause a lot of confusion when you think you know what your skin's undertone is, like once you think you've determined that. And let's say you determine that your skin is a cool undertone, right? Like, let's say that you know what your veins are, you have determined that you are cool undertone, and then you go to pick up a foundation at MAC Cosmetics or Haus Labs. So this is very important to point out because they're two really popular brands that a lot of people use and love. Like, I personally love MAC Cosmetics and I love Haus Labs. You know, I love the Haus Labs Triclone Skin Tech Foundation. This is a beautiful foundation. But that aside, their shade system, the way they label and name their shades and their shade undertones is the opposite of what we have been taught and what I just taught in this whole video. So I want you to remember, if you're gonna go to a MAC Cosmetics, let's just say for example, and you have determined that you are a cool undertone, meaning you have more pink and red throughout your undertone, and you walk into a MAC Cosmetics and you say, okay, well, this foundation says it's an NC, meaning it's standing for neutral cool. But then you get it and it's super yellow because their shade naming system is the complete opposite of what's actually accurate. Same goes for Haus Labs, unfortunately. I've talked about this before, so I'm not really going to go into detail, but I'm just not sure why they decided to do that with their shades. It's very confusing. They also have a very huge shade collection, like a huge shade range to choose from, which is amazing, but it makes it even more difficult for people. And this is something I'm hearing constantly online. A lot of you reach out to me, you DM me, and we talk about this. And from what I hear the most, it's very difficult for you to figure out what your shade is in Haus Labs for multiple reasons, because the shade description of Haus Labs is the opposite of what we've been taught to believe. So again, I want you to remember, if you're going to shop for your foundation at either of those retailers, just make sure you remember that their shade system is going to be the complete opposite. One other last thing I want to note is never go off of what you think the shade looks like in the bottle. This is not an accurate description of what the foundation is going to look like on your skin. The reason for that is they tend to oxidize in the bottle. They come in frosted bottles, which is, you know, it's hard to see through unless it's a completely sheer bottle like this. A lot of them are more of a frosted bottle, which actually helps with oxidation, helps to protect the formula and keep it more stable in the bottle. But unless it's completely sheer and see-through like this one, and even if, like I said, it's not going to give you an accurate description of what it's going to look like on your skin. A couple more things to note that are actually very important. One being, you should always be swatching and doing those 4 swatches in natural lighting. Now you may say, well, how am I supposed to do that? Now let's say you're going to a Sephora and an Ulta, right? Like, how are you supposed to determine what your shade is in natural lighting? You're in artificial lighting, and even worse, you're in overhead artificial lighting, which casts major shadows on your complexion, and it can be very, very hard to see just what colors are in general inside those stores. I will say I think that Ulta has better line than Sephora. They're pretty close to equal. So what I want you to do is, if you can do the 4 swatches against your face, or 3 at the very minimum, but 4 is ideal, ask for a mirror. They always have handheld mirrors. You want to just take that outside. They're going to know what you're doing, so it's not going to be a weird thing. Tell them that you want to test these colors in the natural light and get a really true and accurate look of what they look like in natural light, because that is the true test of anything, right? Have you ever done your makeup in your bathroom with your overhead lighting, and it's early in the morning, you know, you have no natural light coming in and you think it looks good? And this happens to me still to this day, because I have completely different and very off lighting in both my bathrooms. So my makeup could look a certain way. I could be doing my makeup and it looks great in the mirror, looks great in the lighting. I think, okay, this is good. And then what happens? This happens to the best of us. You get in your car, you look in your rearview mirror, and you're like, what are these colors? Why do I have so much bronzer on? What was I thinking with my blush? I couldn't see anything. That right there just tells you it is just so important to test these shades in natural light. So I want to make sure that I point this out, because it is actually really crucial in determining what your skin's undertone is and what your shade is going to be in foundation. So make sure you take that mirror out. Just ask the sales rep if you can walk outside, get that natural light, take a picture if you can, if you're still not sure. The other tip that I really highly suggest is, if you're still not sure what your shade match is in store after all of those tips, ask for samples. This is something you could do almost anywhere except for drugstores. Of course, drugstores do not offer samples, which is, you know, a very unfortunate thing. But most stores, Ulta, Sephora, Nordstrom, Macy's, they all offer little sample cups. So ask for samples. Get at least 3 if you can, and if you feel okay, ask for 4. There's nothing wrong with it. Foundation can be a big investment. Foundation is a more expensive product to purchase as far as makeup goes. But when you think about it, it's such a worthwhile investment, so you want to make sure you get the right shades. Now, lastly, as a professional makeup artist, these are my favorite tips. These are my absolute favorite tips, and I truly believe these are the most helpful when it comes to determining what your skin's undertone is and choosing the right foundation shade for you. Now, if you look it up online, of course, there's going to be some different random tests you can do. For example, there's a jewelry test, but in my opinion, that's just way too subjective to, you know, your personal style and what you gravitate towards more. So I won't even get into that. I don't think it's an accurate representation of what your undertone is going to be. I really hope at the end of this video, you are able to fully go out there with confidence and choose the right foundation shade for you. I cannot wait to hear from you all, so leave me a comment. If you liked this video and you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you like videos like this, you can click on this one right here, and I'll see you all soon.